But all right, hey, that's enough of me trying to come up with interesting topics here. Let's kick it over to our interview with my man Jon Reed talking Tennessee NIL, hot topic here on Rocky Top. All right, we're pleased to once again be joined by my man Jon Reed. He's the host of the outstanding radio show Talk Sports on Fox Sports Knoxville. Got to check it out, and you got to give him a follow at John2_Reed on the Twitter machine. Jon, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure. Happy to talk to you. Hope you're well.
Yeah, I am, and there's always a little bit of a meltdown all across the SEC, and of course Tennessee fans. They're so damn passionate, just the same. And that's really why I wanted to have you on, because last week, all Vol fans know by now the Wyoming transfer Isaiah Nahor flipped his commitment from Tennessee to Texas. And as soon as that happened, I caught your show Talk Sports. You had a really great conversation there on just basically asking, is Tennessee too damn cheap to compete in the ultra competitive SEC? Can you kind of rehash your argument there and kind of what made you want to discuss that on the air?
Well, yeah, it just feels, I think the actual point I was making, I was asking the question because it's always easier to ask people if you're too cheap rather than just scream about Tennessee being too cheap. But for me, I feel like Tennessee athletics are at a crossroads right now when it comes to trying to stay competitive or become competitive again in the SEC. The money is here. The money is here, and you've seen, what Texas A&M just did, for example, and maybe that's an outlier or maybe that's the new norm. I don't know, but there's a lot of money that's now legally thrown around in the SEC. And for Tennessee to, have to deal with some of the rumors and reports around here that Tennessee's kind of dropping the ball with their NIL proposals. And, I know Neyor was from Texas and, maybe wanted to go to Texas, but keep in mind he committed to Tennessee without even really getting on campus. And then, came to Tennessee afterwards for a visit. And, his mom said, hey, we're shutting it down. The next thing you know, he's in Texas. And the next thing you know, he is flipping and signing with Texas or transferring to Texas, however you want to phrase it. And look, I understand there are weight classes here. Texas is always going to be able to big boy other schools just because they're Texas. They freak out about football. But for me, it's a continuing theme, or at least one that's, gotten started over the last 6 or 7 months that Tennessee, who by all accounts has a ton of money to spend, has a ton of, resources with big time boosters and rich donors who care. It's been really frustrating here in Knoxville to see, a lack of companies, a lack of people stepping up to, kind of be at the forefront when it comes to, trying to, get players compensated. It seems like Tennessee's dragging their feet, and, for a program that's desperate to get back, it's really, really hard to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah, and I should note, they do have an NIL agreement with a company. I believe it's called Spire. So it's not like they're not doing any. But you shared a really interesting story. I was hoping that maybe you could, without. I'm sure you don't want to burn a sponsor or anything, but you noted that you did have a sponsor that was interested in hooking up Hendon Hooker legally, which is it's all above board at this point. Can you share that story? And basically the way you told it on air was it was a struggle to get Tennessee to hook that up for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, it's the Spire Sports. I don't want to besmirch them. At least somebody's trying. I am waiting to see where it goes, because so far it seems like it's hard to hear about what Texas A&M and other schools are throwing around, and then see Tennessee's big plan has been hey, here you go, fans, donate your money, $10, $20, $100 a pop to this company that is going to get it to the players somehow without a proof of concept or any real, tangible evidence that it's going to work and that the money is going to go to the right place. But that's a different story and a different conversation. But yeah, no, this would have been about, October, November, after Hendon Hooker had established himself. And, of course, in Knoxville, you start thinking, well, just how good is Hendon Hooker? you start looking at the quarterback draft class in the upcoming NFL draft, and you're just like, wouldn't it be so Tennessee? That's what fans always say around here. So Tennessee to have this guy that you finally feel good about leave school, because keep in mind, Hendon Hooker's a little bit older, leave school to go to the NFL draft because he wants to get paid. And, why is someone stepping up? Why is he all over billboards right now? Like, you finally have, I don't want to call Hendon Hooker a star, but you finally had a Tennessee quarterback that didn't repulse the fans. I mean, think about, the years of Jarrett Garantano. Think about how bad Joe Milton was for a game and a half. Like, you finally had a guy that seemed likable, just, seemed ready to kind of be the face of a program, and you were dropping the ball. And I'm talking about that on air, and I'm getting text messages from, someone who works with a pretty big company locally that was wanting to make a splash and, make Hendon Hooker the pitch man, for some, a project they were working on. And he was telling me, like, look, we're trying. We've tried to call and give Hendon Hooker money. We've tried to get him a big deal. We can't get anyone to call us back. We've been calling him for, 2 weeks at this point, 3 weeks, kind of nonstop, and no one will even return our phone calls. And, we didn't get into the specifics of money. I would imagine at the very least it was, 5 figures, low 5 figures. It could have been higher than that, but $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, something to get the ball rolling. And again, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it was a big project, and they said they were trying to, make an offer. And just, it was frustrating from that point on, just kind of looking, and, Tennessee is a big brand. Like, I know that the Vols haven't been great, so I guess no surprise to anyone who keeps up in the SEC. But still, every year you'll see Tennessee in the top 20 in revenue. You'll see Tennessee on ESPN. You'll see them, still having some brand recognition. Being good players here at Tennessee should have, especially in a fun season, Mike, should have had a bigger endorsement lined up than Cade Mays getting to sling some crystals with his brother and Alontae Taylor. Both those guys I'm talking about, all three of those guys, Tennessee local kids, and Alontae Taylor's running a free cookie promotion with interceptions. And God bless him. I hope he was getting a lot of money, but I don't imagine they were spending, too much money with that. But that's just kind of the nickel and diming that Tennessee was, dealing with this year. And, the report came out that Cade Mays, again, local kid, right down the road, transferred from Georgia, gave up on chances to win national championships to come back, home to play with his brother. If anybody would, be the face of a local program, if it's not your quarterback, it's going to be the homegrown kid. And he said, look, I need, basically 4th or 5th round money, or it might have been 3rd or 4th round money, essentially $300,000 to, come back to school. Keep in mind, 5-star offensive lineman, starting offensive lineman, a very important player on that offensive line, and crickets. Like, you didn't hear anything about anybody stepping up, and then he is now declared for the draft, and he is leaving. Mm-hmm. So all that just kind of spilled over at one point. And, yeah, like, you have to ask the question, is Tennessee football serious right now? And I don't think anyone can say yes confidently. You can hope. You can say that it's coming down the bend in the spring. I know that's the popular narrative here in town. It's like, no, give them time. We're, Tennessee's still dealing with sanctions. They're still dealing with the probation from Jeremy Pruitt. And in the spring, that's when the big money is going to come around. Don't worry. And if you believe that, that's fine. Maybe it's true. But, I think we've all been let down by Tennessee for a long enough time to at least question the validity of those statements.
Yeah, and obviously the SEC soon to add officially Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, we know it's coming. We just don't know the time frame. So, my question to you, Jon, is just how imperative is it, do you think, that Tennessee gets serious about this and steps up? Because the way I'm looking at this, I think the SEC, I mean, hell, it's already the best conference in the country by a country mile here, but I think it's going to be significantly bigger in the coming years. And I'm seeing Ole Miss, they're spending $1.5 billion on new facilities. A&M's already got like the nicest facilities in the SEC. They're spending an extra $500 million to make it even better. And I can go on and on and on. These programs are putting in the investment to make sure that when Texas and Oklahoma come in, they're doing what they can now so they can compete down the road. How big of a challenge is this going to be for Tennessee to kind of do the same? Because I agree with everything you're saying, and I feel like if Tennessee just stands pat here, I don't know if they're going to be able to compete in the new SEC, so to speak.
Well, it's again, and I don't want to sound like I was freaking out. I know it's like, it's been a couple of days since the conversation, but like I kept trying to point out, like, this isn't a freak out because you lost a Wyoming wide receiver to Texas.
Right.
Like, to me, it's just been, a decade of incompetence, a decade of bargain bin shopping. And keep in mind, like, Tennessee, again, maybe I'm overstating it, but has been a top 15, top 20 brand. The Power T does still mean something, and the money has been there. But just look down the list of coaches that they've hired, since Philip Fulmer, really since Lane Kiffin. I mean, you can talk about Lane Kiffin being a splash hire, whatever. But then after that, you obviously poach Louisiana Tech coach. You poach Cincinnati's coach. You grab a coordinator from Alabama. You grab a coach from UCF. So, like, none of these have been established big-time coaches. I was screaming for everyone in January to, like, look down the pike, see what's coming. We know big TV money's coming. Mike, I think me and you even talked about it. Like, every college football coach that was going to be worth a damn was going to be making $7-8 million. That's just the way it was trending. Like, great coaches are going to be making $12-13 million, like the Brian Kellys are all of a sudden making, and Nick Sabans and all of that, and everyone else is going to be making $7-8 million. Tennessee had a chance to finally, like, lead the charge on that, be ahead of the curve. You have Danny White. Tennessee, ironically enough, broke the bank for him, paid him big time money to get him away from UCF to show that, you're finally serious about being an elite program again. And then, you end up hiring Josh Heupel, $4 million, 10th, 11th highest paid coach. Obviously, whenever Oklahoma and Texas come into the league, that's going to get knocked down because they pay their coaches more than that. And you start thinking like you're competing financially with South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and that's just not how you're supposed to see yourself. So, like, keeping up with the facilities, Tennessee's trying to do some renovations, keeping up with, whatever it was you were talking about with Ole Miss, like, all that's nice, but it doesn't have to be that. You could just have, like, invested in trying to, like, get you a home run coach, and maybe Josh Heupel will be good. I'm not trying to make that personal to him. I think Tennessee fans are all pretty satisfied with his first year, give or take a couple of instances and some questions I do have. But like I said, this is just a decade of you just, like, dropping the ball. As the SEC money started pouring in and evening the playing field, Tennessee is no longer special financially, or at least it doesn't act like it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the AD, Danny White, of course. That, like you said, that was a splashy hire. How much confidence do you have in him to kind of reverse this course? Because, I've heard the rumblings that maybe he's, kind of pissed off kind of the old money, but at the same time, I mean, this guy's got an outstanding track record. And like you said, I think the vast majority of Tennessee fans were, just beside themselves that Josh Heupel, a guy from Central Florida, got the job. But he's done, I think a fairly remarkable job in 1 year. The baseball is successful. The Lady Vols are successful. Rick Barnes, I know some people got questions about him, but hell, I think Tennessee basketball has been in best place it's been in a long, long time, outside of maybe a Bruce Pearl run here or there. But, it certainly seems like they've got the whole athletic program moving in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, no, and don't forget the number one ranked tennis team in the country as well. So some respect. And the Cornhole National Champions. I mean, like, all of that groundwork outside of football was already laid, though. Like, I'm not giving Danny White credit for landing Tony Vitello. Like, Tony Vitello obviously was already here. Mm-hmm. He didn't let Tony Vitello leave, which, there was some really nervous times here at Tennessee that they weren't necessarily seeing eye to eye with some of the renovations of Lindsey Nelson. Some rumors that they were wanting the team to move to the new downtown park that's coming in the next couple of years. So, Danny did close the deal and keep Vitello here. So I will give him credit for that. But yeah, I mean, again, all back page rumors and all stuff you just kind of hear secondhand. But the thought process is that he is struggling a little bit with some of the old money, but Danny is trying to focus on getting new energy in the program, getting new season ticket holders there. Some of the stuff does worry me that it's just to add to a resume, which you called impressive, which it is. But, like, some of that makes me worried that it's not necessarily a long-term plan as much as it is, I can point to, look, I grew Tennessee season ticket sales by 400%. We went from X amount of season ticket holders and, added X amounts. He's already talked about the the number of $25,000 boosters that they've added since he got here. So like some of the stuff does kind of scream, look at me. But so far, I have no real problems with Danny. I don't know how, the coaching search went. Some people talked about them trying to make a move on James Franklin and, just kind of coming short on the money. I don't know. Josh Heupel, again, I think everyone would give a B at the very least. Some people would give him an A. So the door is still open on Danny. But, Tennessee is pretty healthy when it comes to everything. And the baseball renovations are coming. And, they are putting a party deck in for Neyland Stadium, which is going to look weird. And it's going to, most likely I think assuredly take Tennessee under 100,000. So it's going to change some of the tradition around here for sure. But ultimately, what it comes down to. It comes down just to winning. Like the party deck ain't going to help Tennessee win. You know what I mean? Like it's going to come down to getting players. And Tennessee tried the paying players illegally with Jeremy Pruitt. Didn't go so well. Went 3-7, probation, all of those things. And I'm just worried that they don't have like a leadership plan in place to do it legally. Because I read, Jenny White's piece in The Athletic, or at least him being interviewed in The Athletic. And he was talking about doing everything on the up and up with integrity, which is what an AD is supposed to say. But at the same time, some of these other schools just have their head down full steam ahead because this, Mike, there are no rules right now when it comes to NIL. No one really knows, like, if you're getting paid your fair market value or you're getting paid just to, come to school there. So, maybe all those schools end up getting in trouble. I'm going to guess they don't, but it's just been something to watch and, try to see Tennessee navigate.
All right, last thing for you, John. I really appreciate your time. Just shifting to the football team and the season ahead, what's the biggest question that you'll have about the Vols heading into spring practice that you hope to find an answer to by the end of spring?
I mean, the defense is obviously always going to be a question with a Josh Heupel team. I think there are a lot of questions. I mean, people were kind of holding out more hope for the transfer portal. That hasn't gone well early. I believe some local reporters around here said this was all kind of designed by Tennessee to continue with their scholarship reductions again until the spring. So I'm holding out hope on, what Tennessee's going to do to fill some positions. But, looking ahead to year two, it's going to be more of the same from year one. And what I mean by that is just what Josh Heupel has to consistently prove is that he can overwhelm and beat these teams that have less talent than Tennessee. Year one, he did a pretty good job of that. I don't think there's any loss on the schedule that you could point to, except maybe, Purdue in the bowl game, but I'm not going to be mad about that. But none of the regular season losses you could point to and say that team was less talented than Tennessee. So that's a good positive sign. So year two, I would say keep building on that. Beat your South Carolinas and Missouris. Don't let Kentucky beat you in Neyland for 2 straight trips. Like, handle that type of business. The Pittsburgh game is going to be tough. Florida, Tennessee is going to be Florida versus Tennessee. And, of course, Alabama and Georgia, you're not going to have anything for them. But just kind of continue to show that you can out-scheme and overwhelm with your offense some of these worst teams.
All right, he's Jon Reed, host of Talk Sports on Fox Sports Knoxville. Give him a follow at Jon__Reed. I really appreciate your time, John.
Yeah, always. Appreciate you.
All right, so just want to say thanks again for John joining the show, giving me so much time to talk about Tennessee and NIL and where the things stand there on Rocky Top, which, I got to be honest with you, and this is not calling out Tennessee. This is every fan base I'm seeing it. We lose a commit, we lose a transfer, NIL can go to hell. That's basically the consensus. Ask any Arkansas fan. They were down in the dumps 2 weeks ago. I was on a Twitter Spaces when all these Razorbacks left the program, and these fans were convinced Texas, USC, they're going to dominate the sport. Arkansas not going to be able to compete. Flash forward a week and a half here later, you got a top half recruiting class because you got one of the best transfer portal classes in the country. So, don't sweat this NIL. Everybody's in on it. It's all above board. It'll work itself out. But, the commitment has got to be there from fans, alumni, boosters. Everybody's got to be pushing in the same direction. And, the SEC's where it's at, due in large part to the leadership that is just outstanding. We all remember, we don't even want to talk about the C word, but there was a football season due to the SEC holding firm. I have no doubt that they'll lead the charge here on NIL and get that sorted out. So Hey, it's interesting to talk about. It's something that nobody's really got any answers for, but it's fun to sit here and kind of spiel about it in the off season. But hey, that's all I got on this episode. I do appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. Hope to catch you on the next one.